The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. And your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, June 25th. Your readers are
Ruth Nowotniak
and Pat Lamont. And our weather. Mostly cloudy today with a thunderstorm. Thunderstorms can bring localized damaging wind gusts, a high of 72. A couple of showers and a thunderstorm this evening, a low of 61. A brief shower or two tomorrow morning, a high of 74. Saturday, a brief shower or two, a high of 78. And Sunday looks like mostly sunny with a high of 82 and a low of 62. Nationally, the high was in Borrego Springs, California, 106. And the low was in Angel Fire, New Mexico, 31. Just as a side, Phoenix was 110. Some of these highs are really ridiculous, as well as Europe. Baghdad, 109, as they're talking about how the temperatures are really high in multiple countries. So let's enjoy our beautiful rain for our flowers and our vegetables and be grateful. Sunrise this morning at 5:38 a.m. Sunset tonight at 8:58. And our weather trivia. What place on Earth has the most thunderstorms? Bogor, Indonesia, averages over 300 days with thunderstorms per year. So let's not complain with a little bit of rain now and then. Oh my God, I had no idea.
I had no idea.
That's a lot of 300 days. Whoa.
That's a lot of
All righty. Now let's go to our front page news. And Thune maintains control of Senate to Trump's chagrin. President Trump may be the head of the Republican Party, but when it comes to the Senate, Majority Leader John Thune is still in charge. Trump, who attended lunch with Senate Republicans at the Capitol on Wednesday, is growing tired of hearing no from Thune as he pushes certain controversial priorities according to people familiar with his thinking. But Thune is sitting on as much support as any leader could with less than 5 months until the midterms, and is surrounded by some emboldened colleagues who are more willing than they have been in years to take on the GOP administration. Thune's colleagues contend it's been a precarious stretch for the leader as he has been forced to disarm several Trump-devised political grenades. But if Trump is frustrated that Thune doesn't follow orders, many of the South Dakota lawmakers' colleagues are grateful the majority leader is willing to risk his own political future with the president to ensure the party has a chance at holding its majority. For the next several months, Thune must continue walking that tightrope between loyalty to a demanding president and protection of an institution and colleagues who face their own political headwinds. The president is creating terms that will never, ever be satisfied. So why are we walking into a boxed canyon? That's what John is confronted with, retiring North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis said. John Thune is an extraordinary leader. He has the patience of Job. Trump has fumed for months over Thune's refusal to jam through a sweeping federal elections overhaul bill ahead of the midterms, a measure the president has argued is critical enough to warrant eliminating the filibuster if necessary. In private conversations with allies, Trump has vented that Thune is not fighting hard enough for his priorities. People familiar with the discussion say and complained that he's tired of hearing the majority leader give him reasons why the narrowly divided Senate can't carry out his demands. Thune has made it clear publicly and privately that the voters are not there to pass the president's voting bill, even as he agreed to bring it up repeatedly, most recently as part of the Senate's marathon voting session this month to pass an immigration enforcement funding package. Thune has declined Trump's calls to fire the Senate parliamentarian or to kill the filibuster to jam it through. It's not good. I mean, the president depends on the majority leader to get his agenda passed. Senator John Cronin, a Texas Republican who recently lost a primary to a Trump-backed challenger, said about the state of Trump and Thune's relationship. As far as I can tell, John Thune is guilty of nothing except telling the president the truth. The rift reflects the broader divide over how the GOP should spend the crucial months ahead of midterms. The lunch on Wednesday, Senator Tommy Tuberville said, was seen as a chance for a day of reckoning to iron out some of those differences. We gotta stay together as a team right now. We're kind of a split group, the Alabama Republican said. Trump, driven by personal conviction and encouraged by a handful of vocal lawmakers, has pressed Republicans to pursue his most ambitious demands with abandon, insisting that his political instincts will guide the GOP to victory, if only they just listen to him. Thune, meanwhile, presides over a Senate Republican conference that has largely grown dismayed by the president's priorities, and increasingly convinced that preserving the party's majority in November may require bucking Trump on some of his most controversial demands. That divide has deepened in recent weeks amid standoffs between the White House and the Senate Republicans over Trump's new acting intelligence chief, Bill Pulte, and the president's aborted attempt to create a $1.8 billion fund that critics say would have largely benefited political supporters and allies. And one day before Trump's visit to the Hill, the Senate voted to rein in the president on Iran. Navigating those perilous moments has invariably fallen to Thune. He carefully managed GOP senators' discomfort with Pulte and worked with Democrats to try to swiftly confirm nominee Jay Clayton to take the role, only to have the president derail the process by canceling the confirmation hearing. When the Department of Justice Anti-Weaponization Fund imperiled support for a massive Homeland Security funding bill, Thune spent hours working to convince Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana to vote against a Democratic amendment that would have torpedoed the bill. That allowed 3 Republican senators facing re-election to vote with Democrats in a stand against the unpopular fund. And when senators were dancing around the idea of having to vote for millions of dollars in funding towards Trump's White House ballroom project as gas prices skyrocketed, Thune gave his members space to stake out their own positions. I am not sure anybody else could have done it as well as John Thune has done it, said Senator Kevin Cramer. He delivers on the president's agenda quite nicely, but never completely caves to the president. Thune is also leading a conference that has become slightly more emboldened to publicly register discontent with the president. Cornyn and Cassidy both lost primaries to Trump-backed candidates this spring, and they, along with the retiring Tills, are now free from the shackles of re-election. The lesson of watching the president endorse Cornyn's opponent, especially when many viewed the Texas senator as largely loyal to the president, has also reverberated within the conference, several members and aides said. Republicans have been deferential to the president to a point that doesn't seem to have done any good, Cornyn said. We've learned some lessons. If you support the president, it doesn't mean he's going to support you. Part of the problem is people who are up in 2028 are thinking, holy crap, this could happen to me. Thune allies argue the tension with the president may merely be a blip. The leader, with his affable Midwestern style, has maintained a strong working relationship with Trump for years, delivering the president his signature tax cut bill, finding a path forward on major housing reform, confirming Trump's cabinet at a historic clip, and candidly laying out his assessment on what is possible with the narrowly divided Senate in regular phone calls. Trump has often complimented Thune, calling him a good man earlier this month, and Thune has sought to develop a close alliance with Trump, even as he's made clear that some of the president's desires simply don't have votes to make them worth pursuing. In a sign that Trump, to some degree, recognizes the limits of Thune's powers and the enormous support he maintains within the GOP conference, he has refused to entertain calls by some MAGA allies to try to depose the majority leader. Yet, in recent weeks, those close to the situation acknowledge the relationship has frayed. I don't think he has the best relationship in the world right now with John Thune, said one Trump advisor, who described the president as particularly frustrated with Thune's insistence on preserving long-held Senate customs. The problem is Trump looks at John Thune as Mitch McConnell 2.0, and that's not a good thing.
Politics as usual goes out window in primary. This article is written by Sandra Tan and Justin Sondel, news staff reporters. When it comes to two of the most interesting local races in Erie County in the 2026 primary, the phrase politics as usual got thrown in the trash. There was nothing typical about the victory of Assemblyman Jonathan Rivera, a city Latino, over Erie County Democratic Party Chairman Jeremy Zellner, the incumbent state senator in the 61st District with deep campaign pockets. Nor is it the standard playbook for a candidate like Adam Bojack, a family court public defender and Democrat socialist, to gain victory in a three-way race over an endorsed and well-established Erie County administrator with deep Democratic Party roots for the 149th State Assembly District. And yet both Rivera and Bojack ended Tuesday giving victory speeches and looking forward to what comes next. The contrasting campaign styles unfolded clearly Tuesday morning, when Zellner was standing with Governor Kathy Hochul, County Executive Mike Poloncarz, and other elected leaders at the ribbon cutting for the new Bills Stadium in Orchard Park. Rivera was still hustling for votes and knocking on doors in the typically high-voting Elmwood Village neighborhood of Buffalo. When mailers and television ads for Zellner were flooding mailboxes in the 61st District, which includes the city and town of Tonawanda, Amherst, Grand Island, and the villages of Kenmore and Williamsville, a few dozen paid and volunteer canvassers and even more union supporters were combing the neighborhoods. They fine-tuned their messaging and fanned the perception that Zellner was a party boss who was leveraging his own power and manipulating voters to further his own ambitions. Given Zellner's funding advantage, political connections, and high-profile endorsements, even Rivera said he was surprised by his margin of victory Tuesday. Rivera, who currently represents the state's 149th Assembly District, kept a steady 10 percentage point advantage over Zellner throughout the evening as election results rolled in. Rivera was expected to win big in his hometown of Buffalo, and that was the case, pulling in more than 73% of city votes according to unofficial results from the Erie County Board of Elections. But the real issue for Zellner came in the suburbs, where he narrowly won some of the bigger towns and even lost the town of Tonawanda by 21 votes. Zellner did take the city of Tonawanda, where he lives, earning 61% of the vote, and the town of Amherst, the county's largest suburb, with 53% of the vote. But those margins were not enough to make up for the number of votes lost in Buffalo. By winning his primary race on Tuesday, Rivera will effectively assure his election to the 61st Senate seat held before this year by Mayor Sean Ryan. He faces no Republican opponent in the general election. Bojack, meanwhile, won the three-way race against Karen Hoke, a deputy commissioner in Erie County's Department of Public Works, and Kevin Deese, a U.S. Navy reservist and M&T Bank employee, who finished third. In that 149th District Assembly race, Buffalo City voters also drove Bojack's victory with 60% of the more than 4,800 casting ballots for him. Hoke took 22% of city voters, while Deese got 16% of the vote.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 16 minutes after the hour, and we will go to our editorial. Toxic legacy. Deadly pollution continues to make its presence known in Niagara Falls. It exists as an unwelcome legacy from the past industries, as well as in ongoing emissions from contemporary manufacturing facilities. Health experts and environmental advocates are rightly concerned. They're looking to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation for action. Health risks must be seriously evaluated, and if remediation and punitive measures are called for, there should be no hesitation. Niagara Falls has had enough of that. The first area of concern is Cayuga Island. This attractive enclave on the Niagara River, just south of the Love Canal neighborhood, has a history with industrial waste that belies its tree-lined riparian appeal. As reported by the News' Mackenzie Schumann, many homes on the western end of the island were built on industrial fill from Niagara Falls' chemical industry, beginning in the early 1900s and lasting through the 1960s, a time when the threat this posed to the environment and public health was little understood. Now it is, and the finding of high amounts of alpha BHC, beta BHC, and mercury, thought to be byproducts from pesticide production in the soil near these homes, is rightly cause for concern. Alpha BHC and beta BHC, toxic if consumed or inhaled, are linked to a wide range of health issues, including cancer. Mercury is a known neurotoxin. Unfortunately, although the presence of these chemicals was initially discovered by the DEC in the 90s, it wasn't an official cause for the state to start a cleanup. Now it is. The amounts the DEC found in the soil last October, after utility workers reported foul odors, far exceeded thresholds considered to be harmful. It's not known which chemical company contributed to the toxic filled material, nor is it clear how dangerous the health risks are. But the DEC is conducting testing, impeded by the fact that many homeowners are refusing to allow their soil to be tested. If enough harmful contamination is found on those properties that are allowing testing, it will be important for the holdouts to reconsider. It is also crucial that the DEC persist in educating residents and pursuing remediation where it can, if necessary. In another Niagara Falls neighborhood, the one that surrounds the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company chemical plant located off 56th Street, health data underscores long suspected problems with the plant's emissions of an orthotoluidine, a chemical known to cause bladder cancer in humans. As Schumann reported, the crude rate of bladder cancer is a roughly 1 mile arc stretching east of Goodyear, was about 63.6 cases per 100,000 residents over the period of 2011 through 2015. That's more than triple New York's bladder cancer rate and double Niagara Falls rate. The DEC says that there is no public health risk from Goodyear's emissions, but there is obvious cause for concern, and it's hard to take this statement at face value given the new cancer data and other documented facts. Orthotoluidine, used by Goodyear as an antioxidant that keeps car tires from cracking, is classified as a known carcinogen. In 2022, Goodyear was found to be releasing orthotoluidine into the air at levels at least 7 times higher than what the state considers acceptable. Even after temporary controls were installed, the levels remained high. At least 78 Goodyear workers have been diagnosed with bladder cancer since the 1980s, according to journalist Jim Morris's book, The Cancer Factory, which shed light on what's considered one of the worst outbreaks of occupational cancer in the U.S. Groups like the Clean Air Coalition of Western individuals like attorney Steve Wodka, who represented more than 24 Goodyear workers who had fallen ill, have been fighting for the rights of Niagara Falls residents to breathe air free of deadly chemicals. They deserve to be heard in Albany.
And our Another Voice article is on occupational hazards. It's written by Jordan Cade, who's an attorney at Environmental Litigation Group PC of Birmingham, Alabama. Documentation of asbestos exposure is needed. As with other metropolitan areas nationwide, the economy of Buffalo rose through decades of expansion, driven by robust metal fabrication and steel processing, as well as highly active power generation and shipping operations along the Great Lakes. Embedded within that history is an insidious legacy of heavy asbestos reliance. This natural mineral became a common component with countless applications for most of the 20th century due to its heat resistance and affordability. As such, it was no surprise that about 27 million workers had contact with asbestos between 1940 to 1979. Even veterans, including a large number of nearly 10,700 personnel in Buffalo, have handled products made with this mineral during military service and upon transitioning into civilian occupations. Eventually, science discovered that inhaling or ingesting asbestos dust composed from microscopic fibers can lead to chronic conditions, specifically lung cancer, that may only manifest up to 40 years later. Tragically, the cumulative impact of these exposures has been reflected in mortality data. From 1999 to 2017, over 15,200 New Yorkers, with more than 1,400 living in Erie County, succumbed to asbestos-associated illnesses. Of these, lung cancer alone accounted for 11,320 fatalities. Fundamentally, the country's existing occupational record-keeping framework was largely designed to document workplace conditions at a specific point in time, not to preserve exposure records for diseases that may emerge decades later. Consequently, when asbestos-related lung cancer or other diseases linked to exposure are eventually diagnosed, workers and veterans alike are often forced to rely on fragmented employment records. No comprehensive system exists to connect those histories into a unified system. Treating this gap as an inconvenience understates its significance. Without documentation, exposure pathways become increasingly difficult to reconstruct, limiting accountability, research, and the full scope of occupational risk. Buffalo's history demonstrates while preserving integrated exposure records is not simply an administrative task, it is a public necessity before another generation's occupational story is lost to time.
And our editorial cartoon today is from Michael Ramirez of Creators Syndicate. It is one frame. It is a gigantic boulder that is falling. And that boulder has a name on it, and it is falling onto a donkey. And the name on that boulder is Democratic Socialist. And the donkey is laying down fearful and is saying, on the bright side, we've hit rock bottom and there's nowhere to go but up. Oh, and multiple profane words. Referring to the attempted overtake, I guess, of the Democratic Party by Democratic Socialists.
Our first opinion piece is written by John M. Crisp, who's from the Tribune News Service. Why shouldn't Iran be allowed a nuclear weapon? Why doesn't Iran have the right to a nuclear weapon? The question seems preposterous unless one looks at it from Iran's point of view, which President Trump and his negotiators are unable or disinclined to do. In fact, Trump has characterized Iran's regime as fanatical, nuts, evil, and crazy, which suggests that it doesn't really have a point of view, this mistaken understanding. In short, Iran has rational reasons for wanting a nuclear weapon that go far beyond the fanatical notion of destroying Israel and the great Satan. Let's start with fear. Iran is a big country in a strategic location with lots of resources. Its neighborhood includes powerful rivals, especially the nuclear-armed Israel and Saudi Arabia, a Muslim country, but Arab and Sunni instead of Persian and Shia. Presidents George W. Bush and Trump have mused openly about taking over Iran militarily. In fact, we're in a war that began with a call for regime change. In the last century, the U.S. did indeed foment what amounted to regime change by implementing a coup that deposed Mohammad Mossadegh, a nationalistic prime minister with democratic leanings, and reinforcing the power of the Shah, an autocrat who ruled by force and terror. Every country wants to defend itself, and it's not hard to see why Iran might want the same. Trump seems to recognize this. In March, 1 month after the war started, he said that a primary goal of the war was to destroy their missiles and razz their missile industry to the ground. But recently Trump said, "What am I going to do? Am I going to let Saudi Arabia have missiles, but they, Iran, can't have them?" Of course. And it's hard to see how this logic doesn't apply to nuclear weapons as well. Then there's pride. Iranians are proud of a culture 10 times more ancient than our mere 250 years. Trump was always terribly mistaken to think that Iran could be bullied or bombed into submission. But countries can be convinced by deft diplomacy, including security guarantees and economic relief, to voluntarily give up their aspiration for nuclear weapons. Historians will be hard-pressed to determine the most pernicious blunder of the Trump era, January 6th, capricious worldwide tariffs, weaponization of the Department of Justice, the coarsening of American politics and culture, the unprovoked war against Iran. History still has to play out, but I might bet on Trump's 2018 abrogation of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action as his biggest mistake. It was effectively fostering modernization in Iran while steering the country away from nuclear aspirations and in the direction of normalcy. We'll never know how that might have turned out. Here's one thing we do know. Trump's ill-advised attack on Iran and his clumsy, short-sighted diplomacy have firmly established one thing in Iran: an intense motivation to acquire a nuclear weapon. They see it as essential to survival. Who could blame them?
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 29 minutes after the hour, and we will continue with our opinion pieces, next coming from Jonah Goldberg of the Tribune Content Agency. Musk's status as a trillionaire really is quite a good thing. I am not a huge fan of Elon Musk as a political activist or commentator. I think he's made Twitter, X, worse. His support for the nationalist right in Europe has been ugly. His tenure leading the Department of Government Efficiency often descended into a little more than performative vandalism. His personal life is not exactly constant with my preference for bourgeois family values. On the other hand, I am a huge fan of his accomplishments in business and engineering. He helped create the foundations of the digital economy with PayPal. At the helm of Tesla, he made the electric car into a viable industry, something climate activists once lionized him for. Starlink, his internet satellite business, has been transformative. And finally, there's SpaceX, which went public last week. It's a testament to human ingenuity, immigrant success, and American greatness on a scale that is hard to describe. If Musk is successful in his ambitions, he will be more responsible than any other human for making ours an interplanetary species. That would mean that long after nearly every name of every politician and businessman you can think of have been forgotten, people will still remember Elon Musk. But none of that is very relevant to the explosion of outrage over his status as the world's first trillionaire. I offer my opinions about Musk only because a remarkable number of people think if you defend the morality or legality of him being so rich, you must be on Team Elon. I am not. I am on Team Capitalism. If you follow the reaction on social media to Musk's shattering of the trillionaire barrier, you think that he now has $1 trillion in the bank. Indeed, indignant politicians rushed to propose taxes on Musk's wealth as if it was suddenly a discovered treasure ship. Many people talked about Musk hoarding dollars that rightfully belong to the poor, the people, or perhaps Social Security beneficiaries. That $1 trillion doesn't exist, save as a function of accounting. He owns a large number of shares in SpaceX. Those shares have an estimated book value of about $1.03 trillion. As I write this, the stock price will change daily, and if it dips in the future, as I expect it will, he might not be a trillionaire for very long. Let's say, heaven forbid, that SpaceX has a disaster on the launch pad, loses some major NASA contract, and the stock price tumbles. What happens to those dollars he supposedly hoarded? Do they vanish? No, because they never existed in the first place. As shocking number of people think, or demagogically pretend to, that the economy is a static pie. All of the wealth in the economy exists in the form of finite number of dollars. This zero-sum fallacy is why people think he's hoarding wealth. He's not. He's creating wealth, and I don't mean just for all of the SpaceX welders and cafeteria staff who now own more than $1 million worth of stock. Increased innovation and productivity grow the pie, which means more pie for more people. That's what economic growth means. In 1969, the year I was born, the U.S. gross domestic product was about $1 trillion in nominal dollars. If you adjust for inflation, U.S. GDP was around $1 trillion a century ago. Does Musk now own all of America's wealth? Of course not, because the economy has grown massively since then. Other than dislike for Musk, the main driver of all this outrage is our obsession with income inequality. To some, it's just not right that anyone be so rich when others are so poor, or feel so poor compared with Musk. This is an aesthetic complaint masquerading as a policy position. In objective terms, no one was made poorer by Musk getting richer. But subjectively, we're all poorer in that the richest person in the world became marginally richer. That's a vibes argument. If I cure cancer tomorrow, I will get very rich. Where's the injustice? The world gets a cure for cancer. The economy saves countless billions fighting cancer, and I get to buy a bunch of cool stuff. Everyone, except maybe some drug companies and oncologists, come out a winner. I'll never cure cancer, but capitalism probably will eventually, which is just one of a trillion reasons why I am on Team Capitalism.
And our last opinion piece is written by Mark Henry S. Triplett, who's from the Fulcrum. High deductible health plans aren't the cure they claim to be. Recently, during rounds, I met a patient who almost missed her own heart attack. She'd had chest pains for hours before she finally came in. Clinicians know what those hours cost. When asked why she had waited, her answer made my own heart sink. She had a high deductible health plan, an HDHP, which meant she would owe thousands of dollars before her insurance paid a single cent. It's like I don't even have insurance, she told me from her hospital bed, asking when someone from financial assistance would be able to speak with her. My patient was not an outlier, and if the current administration's approach to healthcare affordability scales nationally, I worry she may become the norm. Congress has already allowed Affordable Care Act subsidies to expire and stepped back from meaningful health care legislation, causing over 1 million Americans to lose coverage since the beginning of the year. An additional 4 million to 5 million are projected to lose coverage, priced out of insurance as subsidies dry up. That number will climb further as Medicaid cuts take effect. Facing pressures to address affordability, the Trump administration has turned to an old emergency lever, catastrophic health plans, a form of HDHP originally intended as a last resort for healthy adults under 30. This is a mistake. Catastrophic plans aren't always the wrong answer. For healthy adults in their 20s, people who rarely see a doctor and need coverage primarily for worst-case scenarios, the trade-off once made sense. But now the administration is proposing to make them available to Americans of all ages, and these plans were never designed for people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s managing chronic disease. The evidence of HDHP is clear. Enrollees are less likely to seek preventative care, less likely to manage chronic illness appropriately, and more likely to delay or forego treatment altogether, even when that care is technically free. Under the ACA, preventative services must be covered without cost sharing, yet HDHP enrollees consistently use them less. For many, this isn't ignorance, it's rational. While a screening test is free, the potential cascade of follow-up labs, specialist visits, and diagnostic tests will cost. When you must spend thousands before coverage kicks in, ignorance is bliss. Consequences are heaviest for patients with chronic diseases. 1 in 3 people with conditions such as diabetes or heart failure report skipping doses or not filling prescriptions because of cost. Employer-driven switches to HDHPs are associated with higher rates of preventable hospitalizations, the expensive crises that happen when manageable conditions go unmanaged. Without preventative care, our health system ends up paying more for worse outcomes. Even when people do need care, as with my patient, many simply stay home. HDHP enrollees are nearly twice as likely to delay or forego treatment due to cost. For low-income adults with chronic conditions, high deductible plans drive medical debt, which remains one of the leading causes of personal bankruptcy in the U.S. Proponents of expanding HDHPs and catastrophic plans argue that when people pay more out of pocket, they become smarter healthcare consumers and shop for better prices, driving costs down system-wide. It's a nice theory, but the evidence doesn't support it. When employers switch workers to HDHPs, overall spending does fall by roughly 10 to 20%. but that reduction comes almost entirely from people using less care, not from people shopping more wisely. Studies find no evidence of meaningful price shopping even 2 years after employees switch to these plans. Spending less is not the same as spending wisely, and unlike buying a car or a refrigerator, most patients lack the information and leverage to shop for health care in moments of need. Expanding HDHPs is simply a way of dressing up a policy failure as a market solution. These plans are yet another example of shrinkflation. Americans are paying for health insurance but receiving less. Employers and insurers are offloading financial risk, employees are absorbing it, and patients with limited health insurance literacy are signing up believing they have real coverage, only to discover at the worst possible moment that they functionally do not. If we are serious about affordability, we need to look at where the money actually goes. Hospital care accounts for nearly $1 out of every $3 spent on health care in America. Yet hospitals, with their powerful lobbying arms and central role in local economies, are largely left untouched. Politicians find it much easier to target drug and insurance companies where the politics are simpler. The result is the policy theater of expanding catastrophic plans instead of structural solutions like global hospital budgets and fundamental payment reform that address what care costs and not just who pays for it. As campaign season accelerates and pressure to address affordability intensifies, HDHPs and catastrophic plans will be offered as the solution. Don't believe it. Expanding access to catastrophic plans doesn't solve the affordability crisis. It simply reshapes it, pushing financial risks onto the patients least equipped to carry it. In a recent episode of the show Beef, a character faces a $5,000 deductible for emergency care and asks, "Then what is health insurance?" Their query was eerily similar to the question my patient asked from her hospital bed. If we allow catastrophic plans to become the solution to a structural problem, millions more Americans will be asking it too. We deserve better than that, and we should demand it from the people we elect to fix it.
And now we will go to our financial page. HSBC's new lease helps refill Larkin at Exchange. HSBC Bank USA's decision to rent about half of the 10th floor of the flagship Larkin office building, in addition to occupying the entire Larkin U building, marks a significant gain for the landlord's efforts to refill the building in wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Larkin Development Group, owned by the Zemsky family, has been trying for several years to fill space in the 10-story Larkin at Exchange building that was given up by tenants who either moved out or shrunk their footprint when their leases came up for renewal. The 600,000 square foot building has been 95% occupied until the pandemic sent workers home and launched the era of remote or hybrid work, said Kayla Zemsky, CEO, whose father, Howard, led the redevelopment of the former warehouse building 20 years ago. As the New York style appeared to take hold, companies thought they could get away with less physical office space. Larkin has continued to seek out new tenants while also working to liven up both building and the neighborhood with new activities and amenities, such as opening a dozen retail storefronts in the neighborhood in the last 5 years. As it brings the building up to 85% occupancy while sending a signal to others, HSBC is really a big piece of us, and we're beginning to backfill available space, said Zemsky.
Judge rules against federal records access. From Reuters. A federal judge on Wednesday blocked the U.S. Department of Justice from using subpoenas to obtain medical records of transgender patients who, as minors, received gender-affirming care from New York City healthcare providers. U.S. District Judge Catherine Polk Falalia in Manhattan issued a temporary restraining order at the behest of several families and patients who sued after NYU Langone Health disclosed it received a grand jury subpoena as part of the Trump administration's crackdown on treatments for transgender youth. The Justice Department shifted toward using grand jury subpoenas from Texas after numerous judges nationally squashed some of the 20-plus administrative subpoenas it previously issued to doctors and clinics providing such care in July of 2025. It issued them after President Donald Trump signed an executive order ending all federal funding or support for gender-affirming care for transgender youth and directing the Justice Department to prioritize investigations into such treatments. The Justice Department declined to comment.
As part of our newspaper, I'm right. I'm right or wrong. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. Byron Dolores. Day Nancy Nee Mastrangelo. Delaney James. Lubeck Judith. Lyman Edward, nicknamed Eddie. Offhouse Sandra Nee Knapp, K-N-A-P-P. Once again, if you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555.
And now we'll turn to our royal stars, our astrology predictions. Happy birthday for Thursday, June 25th, 2026. You are a compassionate, intuitive visionary. You have a mercurial intellect and a changeable behavior. This year holds exciting changes and increased personal freedom. Stay flexible so you can act quickly on new opportunities. The stars show the kind of day you'll have. 5 is dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. And perusing this, it looks like everybody's going to have either a positive or an average day. Aries, positive day. On one hand, you feel confident about dealing with social situations, your kids, and the arts in a way that is realistic and doable. This is reassuring. And yet, when it comes to issues at home, especially if dealing with a parent, you feel unsure of things. Tonight, it is what it is. Taurus, average day. This is an excellent day to make decisions about redecorating, remodeling, or entertaining because you're in a sensible frame of mind when it comes to improving your domestic world. Tonight, patience. Gemini, also an average day. You'll enjoy discussions with older friends or members of groups who are senior or in charge. Tonight, tread carefully. Cancer, average day. Financial discussions with bosses, parents, and people in authority will be practical today. You'll be pleased with what is agreed upon. Tonight, take it easy. Leo, a positive day. You have strong ideas about travel, higher education, politics, religion, and publishing. Tonight, confidence. Virgo, average day. Discussions with friends and groups might be confusing today. You might feel disappointed at your ability to assert yourself. Tonight, check your finances. Libra, average day. You'll impress others today with your sensible suggestions about how to make improvements, perhaps how to make something look better. Tonight, low-key. Scorpio, average day. Others will admire you today because you're full of practical ideas that can improve things that are related to your work, your health, or your pet. Tonight, downtime. Sagittarius, a positive day. You love to travel, and today is a fabulous day to make travel plans. because not only do you have realistic ideas, you won't overlook details and you will easily tick all the boxes. Tonight, flights of fancy. Capricorn average day. Today you might get the financial and practical support to make improvements at home or to your family. Tonight, be cautious. Aquarius, average day. It's hard to defend your own best interests at work today. Somehow your heart just isn't into it. Tonight, patience. And Pisces, an average day. Parents should be extra vigilant today because it's easy to kid yourself about something related to your children. Tonight, relax.
And today in history, we have a lot of historical things happening. In 1924, Rosalind Walter, who later became known as a major philanthropist and the nation's first Rosie the Riveter, was born in Brooklyn, New York. During World War II, while working at the Vought Aircraft Company, Walter was featured in a newspaper column that led lyricist Red Evans and composer John Jacob Loeb to write the patriotic song called Rosie the Riveter that spawned posters, ads, and magazine cover art featuring other women promoting American strength and determination. In 1947, Contact first published The Diary of a Young Girl, the journal of Anne Frank's experience that began when she was 13, about 3 weeks before she and her family members went into hiding for 2 years from Nazis who occupied the Netherlands during World War II. In 1950, North Korea started the Korean War by crossing the 38th parallel and invading South Korea with the support from the USSR. In 1998, software giant Microsoft released its first copies of the Windows 98 operating system to the retail market. By February 1999, the company said it had sold 25 million licenses of Windows 98. And in 2009, the king of pop, Michael Jackson, died at the age of 50. And in 2020, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention expanded the list of people at increased risk for severe COVID-19 cases, noting the risk increases with age. And from our political notebook, USPS defense plan calling for voter list. The head of the U.S. Postal Service on Wednesday defended a plan demanded by President Trump to require states to provide lists of voters who received mail ballots. U.S. Postmaster General David Steiner said at a Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee hearing that under the proposal, USPS would not deliver ballots in states where officials refused to comply. Steiner argued the plan would be more efficient and mirror what many states are currently doing. USPS is making sure we match the ballots that a state believes they're sending out to what actually gets sent out. The proposal would require states to provide the USPS the names and barcodes tied to their mail-in ballots for federal elections. It would also require states to provide unique barcodes applied to the outbound and return ballot mail envelopes, saying it will help determine adherence to federal law and facilitate law enforcement efforts. All 47 Democratic senators wrote a letter to the service on Wednesday urging the agency to drop the plan. In California, policy on immigration court arrest vacated. A federal judge in California vacated the Trump administration's nationwide policies expanding arrests at immigration courthouses, and the duration for detaining non-citizens in short-term facilities, finding the actions of Immigration and Customs Enforcement and another government arm arbitrary and capricious. District Judge Casey Pitts of the Northern District of California Tuesday vacated ICE's policies that had rescinded previous strictures on arrest at immigration courthouses and allowed detainees to be held in short-term cells for up to 72 hours. He did the same for a similar policy undertaken by the Department of Justice Executive Office for Immigration Review that removed limits on courthouse arrests. The 71-page ruling issued in a case brought by an asylum seeker arrested upon departing a routine hearing at a San Francisco immigration court struck down key parts of the Trump administration's immigration enforcement policies. Pitts, appointed by former President Joe Biden, effectively reinstated Biden-era policies that limited arrests at immigration courthouses to narrow circumstances and capped detentions in short-term facilities for up to 12 hours. And ruling blocks DOJ from transgender records. A federal judge on Wednesday blocked the U.S. Department of Justice from using subpoenas to get medical records of transgender patients who, as minors, received gender-affirming care from New York City healthcare providers. District Judge Catherine Polk Fela in Manhattan issued a temporary restraining order at the behest of several families and patients who sued after NYU Langone Health disclosed it received a grand jury subpoena as part of the Trump administration's crackdown on treatments for transgender youth. That subpoena was issued by a grand jury in the Northern District of Texas, a venue popular among conservative litigants, and that had recently emerged as hub of the DOJ's criminal investigation. Fela, appointed by Democratic President Barack Obama, said that executive order was among several President Trump issued that sought to identify, to demonize, and ultimately to eradicate an entire population of transgender people. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features for Thursday, June the 25th on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers have been
Ruth Nowotniak
and Pat Lamont.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Pat Lamont.
and Ruth Nowotniak, and we'll now go to our City and Region section. Acheon details worries as she quits school board. This is written by Ben Tutsumoto, who's a news staff reporter. The Buffalo School Board now has a surprise vacancy after North District Representative Cindy McEachern announced her resignation Wednesday. McEachern released a statement on social media detailing her decision. I have serious concerns about the board's current governance practices and whether transparency, accountability, and collaboration are being upheld in a way that serves students, families, and the public, she wrote. Effective public service requires public trust, and at this time, I do not believe the board is operating in a manner that consistently supports sound decision-making or the best interests of the district. McEachern departs about 6 months into her second 3-year term on the board. She ran unopposed in November. She also serves as Chief Executive Officer for Peace Prints of Western New York, a social justice nonprofit that helps men and women in the criminal justice system re-enter the community. Buffalo School Superintendent Pascal Mumbenga on Wednesday was grateful for Acheon's service to the district. I want to personally thank her for the trust she placed in me as part of the team that brought me to Buffalo to serve as superintendent of the Buffalo Public Schools, he said in a statement. Her leadership helped strengthen our district and public education. On behalf of the Buffalo Public Schools, I wish her continued success in her future pursuits. McEachern's resignation comes amid a tumultuous time for the Buffalo School Board, which agreed last week to hire an outside firm to investigate reports of sexual harassment by a board member. A few days earlier, she and board member at large Larry Scott blasted the board's leadership team for knowing about the accusations for roughly 2 weeks before they shared information internally and acknowledged them publicly. Acheon and Scott this week also penned a rebuttal to an opinion piece in the Buffalo News by Ferry District Representative Stefan Wright, who criticized the timing of Mumbenga's cost of living raises to the district's exempt employees when the district needed more than $60 million from its reserves to balance next year's budget. The co-authored rebuttal claimed fiscal irresponsibility by the board. However, noting the members' travel expenses have risen by $23,000 this year and overall spending is up 33% to nearly $100,000. My ultimate reason for leaving is because I lack the trust in the decisions we are making and whether or not we are doing the right thing, she said. During her first term on the board, McEachern strived to improve the governance policies guiding the 9-person group, aiming to focus conversation and actions more on student achievement, as well as setting clear goals for the board and expectations for the superintendent. She led the board to partner with the Council of the Great City Schools, a national consultant and trainer that equips boards with governance strategies. The slogan of student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change was frequently used, but often in the context of board arguments. That, for me, spoke as if it was written for the Buffalo Board of Education, she said, because if we could just take that moment and look inward at our own behaviors, we could shift our mindset and our way of thinking and see a ripple effect across the district. Sadly, I don't think it's going to work for us. Regulations will force the board to act quickly to fill McEachern's spot. The school board has 30 days from her resignation to conduct a majority vote on a temporary replacement to finish her term, which has 2.5 years left. If a board majority does not vote on a replacement in that period, Sean Ryan, Buffalo's mayor, can make the appointment as long as his choice is approved by the Buffalo Common Council. McEachern said there were bright spots in her tenure. As somebody who felt like an outsider coming in because I did not have deep-rooted ties to the district, I have met a lot of amazing people along the way. We have some incredible staff that work for the Buffalo Public Schools, and the things they've accomplished, the things our students have done that I've had a chance to witness in a way that I might not have had before, that is impactful and that is promising, that is hopeful, and we will prevail.
Dems face uphill climb in House district races. Now comes the hard part for Aaron Geis and Alyssa Ellman, winning in November. The two Democrats won primary contests Tuesday night for a chance to challenge Republican members of Congress in two of New York's mostly GOP-friendly districts. Geis, a St. Bonaventure University theology professor and first-time candidate, handily defeated Kenmore attorney Kevin Stocker in the Democratic primary for the 23rd Congressional District. In the 24th District, Army veteran Ellman defeated business owner and community activist Diana Kastenbaum for the Democratic nomination. Both winners now head into general election campaigns against Republican incumbents whose districts heavily favor the GOP. Geis will face Representative Nick Langworthy, while Ellman will face Representative Claudia Tenney. Geis declared victory around 10:30 p.m. Tuesday when he held a 66% to 29% vote advantage over Stocker, with 80% of election districts reporting, according to the State Board of Elections website. By Wednesday, with nearly 100% of the votes tabulated, the Board of Elections said Geis had 59% of the vote to Stocker's 41%. "I'm tremendously excited," Geis said in an interview at the Erie County Democratic Committee primary night party at Brightsmith Brewing on Niagara Street. "I've been out on the road for over a year at this point, done well over 100 events, maybe covered 50,000 miles. Geis, 45, is an associate professor of theology and Franciscan studies at St. Bonaventure. He said that he entered the race after Langworthy's office sent him a form letter response to a serious inquiry he made objecting to a Trump administration policy that could make it more difficult for Ukrainian war refugees to receive protected status in the United States. The Democratic primary pitted Geis, a first-time candidate, against Stocker, 62, a personal injury attorney from Kenmore and frequent candidate for elected office. Both men are former Republicans. Stocker represented litigants in courts against the Catholic Diocese of Buffalo, Tonawanda Coke, and the Amagon Funeral Home Crematory. He has worked as a prosecutor in the village of Kenmore and for the town of Tonawanda, and has run unsuccessfully for village justice, town justice, state assembly, and state senate. In 2014, while still a Republican, Stocker defeated Senator Mark Rizzanti in the GOP primary for the 60th Senate race. Then he lost a through race that November to Mark Penapinto. In the 24th District, Ellman had 58% of the vote to Kastenbaum's 36%, with 86% totally counted on Tuesday night. As of Wednesday, with 98% of the votes counted, Ellman led in a percentage of votes cast remained unchanged. Ellman entered the race last summer, 5 months after she lost her job at the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, amid cuts enacted by Trump administration's Department of Government Efficiency, headed by Elon Musk. She joined the Army National Guard in 2001 while attending Fillmore Central High School in Allegheny County. Following the 9/11 attack, she went to Afghanistan on an 18-month tour of duty as an Army Flight Operations Specialist. Ruth?
M&T's Meet Me Downtown aims to attract people with fun events, and this is written by Matt Glenn, who's a news staff reporter. The push to generate more downtown activity is getting another nudge. M&T Bank is spearheading special events outside of the weekday work hours aimed at drawing people downtown and highlighting the businesses in those places. M&T's Meet Me Downtown initiative builds on the Mission Main Street program the bank launched in 2025. This year's program features 6 events taking place between July 11th and September 26th. Our goals are simple. We want to bring people downtown for extended periods beyond just the normal workday to be able to create fun and inclusive events that have broad appeal and to showcase downtown businesses and organizations, said Tracy Woodrow, M&T's Chief Administrative Officer and Western New York Region President. The events are 1. Home by 10 block parties, July 11th and August 8th, hosted by the Chippewa Alliance. The nostalgic dance parties will bring together 8 venues with 1990s and 2000s music. Doors will open at 6 p.m. with a 10 p.m. close. 2. Street Soccer Cup and World Cup Watch Party, July 18th, hosted by the Chippewa Alliance and Buffalo Pro Soccer. The event will feature a 5-versus-5 soccer tournament for ages 10 and up, along with a watch party for the World Cup's third-place match. 3. Pickle Fest, August 16th, hosted by the Mind Over Foundation. The pickleball tournament and celebration of all things pickle will take place at Riverworks. 4. Main Street Block Party, August 29th, hosted by Buffalo Fashion Runway. The street festival at Fountain Plaza will celebrate fashion, culture, music, and community. And Circle the Square 2, September 26th, hosted by Go Bike Buffalo at Niagara Square. Participants in a family-friendly relay complete 150 laps around the square, riding anything with wheels without a motor. M&T declined to say how much money it was contributing to the events. In addition to funding, the bank is providing volunteer support and guidance. Mayor Sean Ryan said the events will drive more activity downtown. Downtown, it has to be the active hub of our economic community, our cultural community, our social community. And if it's not, then you don't really have a center of the universe, Ryan said. The mayor said he is encouraged to see a variety of events popping up downtown, including the lineup announced by M&T and its partners.
3 churches received Sacred Sites grants from the state. 3 Buffalo churches are receiving grants from New York to help fund restoration projects. 21 sacred sites totaling $287,500 have been awarded to 18 historic religious properties throughout the state, including Buffalo's Faith Missionary Baptist Church, Durham Memorial AME Zion Church, and Blessed Sacrament Roman Catholic Church. The Sacred Sites programs provide congregations with matching funds for planning and implementing exterior restoration projects, along with technical assistance and workshops. The New York Landmarks Conservancy announced the religious awards on Tuesday. Religious buildings tell the story of our history, our immigration patterns, our architectural growth. They also anchor communities, said Ped Green, president of the Conservancy. Collectively, these grantees serve 94,500 persons beyond their congregation with social service and cultural programming. Faith Missionary received $21,000 to help fund roof and gutter replacement and preservation consulting for the project. The church was built along Buffalo's Humboldt Parkway, now Kensington Expressway, in 1925 and designed in the neoclassical style by architect Louis Greenstein for the synagogue temple Beth David. It retains many original architectural details of the synagogue. Durham Memorial AME Zion Church was granted $10,000, is a 1923 neo-Gothic red brick and cast stone church, also designed by Greenstein and located at the edge of the downtown Buffalo in the Michigan Street African American Heritage Corridor. Blessed Sacrament Roman Catholic Church was awarded $10,000 to help fund stained glass restoration. Originally built as the chapel of the Roman Catholic Bishop of Buffalo in 1887, the current Blessed Sacrament was moved back from Delaware Avenue about 190 feet in 1911 to make way for St. Joseph's new cathedral, which was demolished in 1976. The original late Victorian Gothic Revival structure was designed by noted ecclesiastical architect Adolphus Droydring with the 1908 cruciform transept expansion designed by local Catholic architect Albert Post. Ruth?
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is approximately 15 minutes past the hour, and we will go on to sports. And our first article is by Mike Harrington on the Sabres. Sabres' Kekalayan still holds many key cards. Not since the days of Tim Murray have we heard a general manager of Buffalo Sabres be as frank and open as Jarmo Kekalayan when he met with reporters Wednesday at One Bills Drive, the hockey team's home for draft week. In the days of tanking and drafting Sam Reinhart and Jack Eichel, Murray didn't keep many secrets or hide too many of his feelings. Kekalayan, one of the handful of NHL GMs in the spotlight across North America, acted in much the same way Wednesday, minus, of course, all of Murray's notorious F-bombs. Kekalayan rolled up his sleeves and downright shook the NHL to its core Tuesday night by trading Bowen Byram and Jordan Greenway to Chicago and acquiring the number 4 pick in the NHL draft and 6'8" defenseman Louis Crevier. He created a myriad of possibilities for the Sabres during the first round of Friday night's proceedings at KeyBank Center. The GM's reputation as a wheeler and dealer from Columbus preceded him to Buffalo, and we finally saw that Tuesday with the Byram move. But don't think Kekalayan was happy about it. In fact, he seemed borderline furious. Byram wanted to be a number 1 defenseman, and that was that. He wasn't staying, even though the Sabres worked with him the entire season, trying to get him to accept his role as a terrific second-pair defenseman on a winning team. Byram wasn't signing. This wasn't going to happen, so we had to make a decision, Kekalayan grumbled. He didn't want to negotiate. He wasn't going to sign. He didn't leave us an option. Byram wanted to be number 1 level blue liner, and hasn't had the chance to do that either in Colorado, Mike Kelker, or Buffalo, Rasmus Dahlin. The Blackhawks are going to spend a ton of cash on a guy who has never been in the role. In speaking to Chicago reporters on Wednesday, Byram was effusive about the chance to play with fellow Vancouver native Connor Bedard, and Byram was going to get all the power play time he wants that he didn't get here. But I have no idea how Byram thinks he's going to win on a Blackhawks team that is still several pieces away from contention, even with Bedard. Byram talked multiple times, including during his exit interview last month, how tough the 24-25 season in Buffalo was on him after coming from Stanley Cup runs in Colorado. Then there's Alex Tuch. Kekalayan didn't hold out any hope for a resolution on that contract, a deal that seemed like a slam dunk last July and through the first half of the season isn't going to happen. How disappointed was the GM? I think that's a question for him, Kekalayan said of Tuch. We wanted to sign him. We've always said it depends on the contract. As the GM went on to say, 30-something players are a risk, especially when they want 8-year deals north of $10 million per season. And the GM came right out and said he was looking for a sign and trade for Tuch, which he pulled off with Washington an hour after he left the dais. Sure feels like Tuch and Byram paid lip service to winning and wanted to cash in. Where exactly are the Blackhawks and Capitals going anytime soon? With Tuch, Byram, and Jordan Greenway gone, and more than $21 million in cap space, the Sabres quickly moved to lock up Zach Benson Wednesday night for 7 years at an annual cap hit of $7.7 million. They can now keep Beck Mellenstein out of free agency, and they can do more, too. As for the number 4 pick, the view here is the Sabres are going to trade it. You wonder if Kekalayan will put together a package, perhaps starting with both picks 4 and 20, to pry burly forward Matthew Ness out of Toronto. If that doesn't work, the Sabres have no problem using number 4 to take a defenseman like Sault Ste. Marie's Chase Reed or North Dakota's Keaton Verboff, who was coached in the Western League by former Sabres player and assistant James Patrick. Up front, the chick name climbing the charts, who Kekäläinen is known to be a fan of, is 5'9" Swedish center Viggo Borjak. He was apparently quite the combination of skill and sandpaper in the Swedish league this season. Kekäläinen seems to douse any fire about a goaltending move when he pointed out the Sabres are fine with their 3-goalie rotation. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen had a .910 save percentage in the regular season, and Colton Ellis is a great prospect. The GM said one game in the playoffs scrutinized goalies far too much. Fair. Of greater overall significance was Buffalo finally starting to grow as a destination in the wake of a 109-point season. We've had a couple of agents tell us their players have changed their no-trade list, and Buffalo is off it now, so that's great news for us. I think we can be a destination. Everybody saw the passion in this hockey market in the spring and the playoffs. It was incredible. People are taking notice of that, and they also see we have a really good team. Wild couple days, more to come for sure.
New Bills O-line coach Pat Meyer looks to build on the success under Aaron Kromer. The Buffalo Bills were staring at the possibility of a big problem this offseason. The retirement of offensive line coach Aaron Kromer meant the team lost a position coach generally regarded as one of the best in the NFL at what he did. In Pat Meyer, the Bills hope they found a solution that will minimize the potential negative impact of Kromer's departure. This offense has had a lot of success, new offensive coordinator Pete Carmichael said, so the new coaches were not looking to come in here and change things, maybe make some adjustments or some suggestions, but Pat's also got a lot of experience in this league and a lot of success. He's worked with Joe Brady before. I think he's just moving right into that room, and the players have gravitated toward him. I think it's a very positive situation. Finding a coach who wasn't going to try to fix what was broken was paramount for the Bills' off-season. In Meyer, the team thinks that is exactly who they found. It's no surprise then that Meyer actually worked under Kromer at 2 different NFL stops, including during the 2015-16 seasons with the Bills. Meyer considers Kromer one of his best friends in addition to being one of his coaching mentors. Pat Meyer is Aaron Kromer. When I hear Pat Meyer, you guys should think Aaron Kromer. They're the same, but just a little different, just different in a little way, left tackle Dion Dawkins said. They are the same with patience. They understand levels of the game. The job of any position coach in the NFL extends beyond teaching the basic fundamentals, imperative to having success. There is a psychology involved too, figuring out how to relate to each player and how to best to get through to them is something that Dawkins has found Meyer to be good at the ideology. Any coach that is coaching a player, they have to understand that every player is drastically different, Dawkins said. Our coaches understand that. Aaron Kromer did, and Pat does. There's no hiccup. We're all on the same road to success. Meyer knew he was stepping into a situation that did not require a drastic change when he was hired in February. I've told the guys since day one, I'm going to be very similar to Aaron, Meyer told the Buffalo News earlier this month in a one-on-one interview. We're very similar in our coaching styles and philosophies. There are some things maybe from a technique standpoint that are going to be different. Obviously, our personalities are a little bit different. I just told the guys, you be you. I came into this environment where there was a winning tradition. The line is a good line. Typically, I've gone places and coaches go places, and you come into rooms that are broken at times. This room is not. Meyer, 54, spent 4 past seasons as the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive coach line. Like many NFL coaches, he has taken a winding path to get to his current position. He started his coaching career in Memphis then worked for North Carolina State, Florida State, Colorado State, before going to the Canadian Football League, where he served as the Montreal Alouettes offensive coordinator, offensive line coach. He broke into the NFL with the Chicago Bears as the assistant offensive line coach during the 2013-14 season, during which he served as the Bears offensive coordinator. Meyer did some of his best work with the Steelers during the 2025 season. Despite multiple injuries that required constant reshuffling, the Steelers finished second only to the Denver Broncos in pass block efficiency ratings compiled by analytics website Pro Football Focus. We have a good mixture of veterans and youth, Meyer said. I know they're taking the coaching. I've enjoyed the guys a ton so far. We've got great leadership, guys with a lot of experience. We've got a bunch of guys who have done it the right way and won a lot of games. So I wasn't going to come in here and change it anyways, but Aaron and I are very similar in a lot of things, philosophy and technique. It was an easy transition for me, I can tell you that. Even a lot of the language is the same. I've enjoyed it. I enjoy coaching wherever I'm at, but I'm really, really enjoyed being back here in Buffalo.
And now to the World Cup. U.S. looks to stay perfect. And this is by the Newswire services. The United States will look to maintain its momentum and protect several key players from suspension when it faces already eliminated Turkey in its final World Cup Group D match at Los Angeles Stadium on Thursday. The Americans secured the top spot with back-to-back wins to open their campaign, including a 2-0 victory over Australia in Seattle on Friday that ended with a sold-out crowd serenading the team with John Denver's Take Me Home Country Roads. The mood was far different later that day in Santa Clara, where Turkey's hopes were extinguished with a 1-0 defeat by Paraguay, their second straight scoreless outing in the tournament marked by the sides' wasteful finishing. Although the match is effectively a dead rubber, U.S. coach Mauricio Pochettino still has decisions to make, with forward Florian Balogun, midfielder Tyler Adams, and defenders Chris Richards and Anthony Robinson all carrying yellow cards. Any player booked twice during the 3 group stage matches is suspended for the next game, meaning the coach is likely to rest or limit the minutes of the quartet before the U.S. begins the knockout stage on July 1 in Santa Clara. That could open the door for fringe players to press their case while giving the coach a chance to manage the fitness of talisman Christian Pulisic. The forward has not played since coming off at halftime in the opener against Paraguay with a left calf injury, although he returned to full team training this week. Pochettino started Ricardo Pepi in his place against Australia and now must decide whether to give Pulisic minutes against Turkey or hold him back as a precaution. The U.S. players said on Tuesday they were determined not to let their standards slip. The Americans have previous experience of being punished for such circumstances. At the 2002 World Cup, with a place in the knockout stage secured, the U.S. was beaten 3-1 by already eliminated Poland in the final group match. Cristiano Ronaldo returned in a vintage of performance with 2 goals and delivered Portugal to its first win in the 2026 World Cup, a 5-0 rout of overmatched Uzbekistan on Tuesday in Houston. You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time is approximately 29 minutes past the hour, and we will now go to Asking Eric. We'll see what advice he is dispensing. Helpful in-laws gradually shut out of family plans. Dear Eric, our married son and wife share all their plans, ideas, life experiences with her family, and we hear nothing. We watch our grandkids, help them at the drop of a dime. We even spiff up the house when watching the kids and let their dogs out. When we hear what they're doing or planning from her side of the family, we've had to stop acting like it's a surprise. We just smile and nod. Our daughter-in-law is definitely one-sided. She's slowly stopped inviting our side of the family to do things. My son goes along with it to keep her narcissistic behavior under control, but he doesn't see it is controlling him and us. There's even an inequality in the way they give gifts. Last Christmas, they spent $300 on my husband and $10 on me. Her family received very large, expensive gifts. I tell them gifts aren't about being equal, but fair. So do I back down on my gifts to my daughter-in-law? Unequal in-laws. Dear in-laws, as you probably know, it's not really about the gifts. So pulling back on what you give your daughter-in-law isn't going to bring you the satisfaction you want. There are a lot of strong feelings here about your daughter-in-law, but there is some information missing about your relationship with your son. Have you talked to him about what you're feeling and suggested concrete ways that you'd like to feel included? Is he telling you about the plans or just leaving all communication up to his wife? It's possible that she's just better at communicating with her side of the family, and your son needs to communicate better with you. They're not shy about including you in parts of their lives. You babysit and help them around the house. So the crux of the issue could be the plans you're not hearing about. Do you expect or want to be doing things with her side of the family? Or do you want to be doing similar things with your side of the family? If it's the latter, you may have to be more proactive about getting the ball rolling on those things. It's also possible that your daughter-in-law is aware of the negative feelings you have about her. She may be pulling back because of that conflict, which of course only makes the conflict worse. See if there's a way to smooth things out. You don't need to just take it. But if you're not seeing eye to eye with her, you can talk it out and see if you can come up with a new way of interacting so that everybody feels seen and heard. Next letter. Dear Eric, I am the sole surviving step-grandparent of a young man who recently married. I have always been very fond of him. I was not invited to the wedding. His mother informed me via text of the marriage 2 days later and stated, "Immediate family attended." It was a local event. My late husband and I attended weddings of both the groom's siblings some time ago. I feel hurt that I wasn't invited. Your thoughts? Signed, Left Out. Dear Left Out, I'm sorry you felt excluded. On the one hand, it seems like it would have been easy to include you or at least reach out to you in advance. On a slightly different hand, their budget or space constraints may have dictated just how small they needed to keep it. Since neither you nor they can go back and change anything, the best path forward is one that leads to a deeper relationship with your stepson. Reach out to him directly with your congratulations and see if he's open to a visit, a lunch, a phone call, or something of the sort. It's not clear to me how close you are right now, but since you're fond of him, it's worth telling him that and asking if he's open to forming a tighter bond with you. A wedding is an important day, but it's only one day. A relationship is made up of many ordinary days and many milestones. I hope you can be a part of his life for the ones still to come. Next letter. Dear Eric, another response possible to the wife who wrote about her husband who got very upset when she would call a professional about home repairs. Your response was good, but another is that this couple do not belong to an owner-occupied home. They should be renters who call the landlord when something needs fixing. Response. This could indeed solve this problem once and for all. If the couple can't come to an agreement about how and by whom repairs are done, taking it off their shared plate could be the next best option.
Our first life feature. Legacy of Wilson to remain as Bills usher in a new era. The Bills are leaving the Orchard Park Stadium that Wilson had built in the early 1970s and for a time was named for the late owner of the team. They are ushering in a new era for the team by moving across the street on Abbott Road from where the statue stands commemorating Wilson. But that doesn't mean Wilson is being forgotten. It was made clear Tuesday during the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the new stadium that the legacy of Wilson, the founder of the Bills, who owned the team from 1960 until his death in 2014 at age 95, will remain an important part of the franchise even as the team moves into its new home. Wilson's decades-long contributions to the team and his willingness to negotiate a deal that set the foundation for the Bills staying in Buffalo were noted during the ribbon cutting. His wife, Mary Wilson, was also invited to speak as part of the ceremony. Governor Kathy Hochul and Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz were among those who thanked Ralph and Mary Wilson for their commitment and dedication to the Bills and the Buffalo community. The legacy of Ralph and Mary Wilson is still felt through our community every single day, and their generosity and sense of community spirit is powerful. Going from the rock pile in 1960 to the old Ralph and all the other names the stadium has had, ultimately Highmark, to being here today, and you've been a part of our family for so long, said Hochul. Terry and Kim Pagula purchased the Bills for $1.4 billion in 2014, and they've been instrumental in moving the new stadium project forward, even after talks with the county and the state stalled about 7 years ago. Then the COVID-19 pandemic hit, resulting in further delays in negotiations. How lucky are we and blessed as a community that Ralph Wilson came here, and we are now blessed to have Terry and Kim, said Mary Wilson, who attended her first Bills game with the Detroit-raised Ralph Wilson in 1990 and instantly became a Buffalo fan. They'll carry on this amazing legacy for years and years, and in my opinion, it's forever, she added. An important part of Ralph Wilson's legacy is his understanding of what it would take to keep the Bills in Buffalo as the county and team completed terms of a 10-year lease deal in 2013 that included $130 million in stadium upgrades. We would not be here without their commitment to this community many, many years ago. Thank you to all of the Wilson family and their team for ensuring back then that our team would still be here after Mr. Wilson's passing, said Poloncarz. Included in that lease, Wilson was willing to agree to a poison pill to prevent someone from buying the team and moving it out of Buffalo after his death. The buyout clause in the agreement meant that if someone wanted to buy the team and move it, they needed to pay $400 billion to the county and the state to do so. When Wilson died and the estate put the team up for sale, there were around 20 billionaires interested in purchasing the team, but only 3 made a bid because of that clause in the lease. It helped keep the team in town because we wound up with an owner who believes in this community. You could make a lot more money moving this team to a bigger market and owning this team somewhere else, so it was important to have that poison pill in the lease. And then, in the end, even though it was tough negotiations for the new stadium, we were able to keep the team, said Poloncarz. Before his death, Wilson also put into motion the establishment of his namesake foundation, which has been a game changer for Western New York and Detroit area communities. The Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation is a 20-year, limited-life charitable organization dedicated to improving the quality of life in the communities that Wilson loved and called home through funding causes from recreation and fitness to early childhood education and economic development. The foundation has committed $250 million to the Ralph Wilson Park project, which is transforming the former LaSalle Park, $100 million to arts and cultural nonprofits, and tens of millions of dollars to other projects and ventures in Western New York. The plan for the future is to keep Wilson a fixture around the stadium. Pete Guelli, president of business operations for the Bills, said the Ralph Wilson statue and monument plaque in Founders Plaza, located near the Bills store across from the new stadium, will remain in some way, shape, or form once the Bills figure out what that parking lot will look like and where it fits best. It's pretty obvious how much reverence Terry has for Ralph by having Mrs. Wilson involved in the ribbon cutting and everything else from the event, Guelli stated.
And our analysis article is written by Samaya Nakul from Reuters. Netanyahu may be the biggest casualty in U.S.-Iran deal. The biggest casualty of the U.S.-Iran deal may not be Israel's Iran strategy, but the political brand Benjamin Netanyahu spent decades constructing as the Israeli leader who would uniquely bend Washington to his will on Iran, analysts, former U.S. officials said, and diplomats say. Netanyahu built his political identity on that he alone could keep the U.S. and Israel in strategic lockstep on Iran. Cultivating Republican support, he cast himself as the only Israeli leader capable of influencing successive U.S. presidents and insisted that only sustained military pressure could contain Tehran. At the height of his power, he was described by diplomats as the American whisperer, the Israeli leader who could pick up the phone and ensure Washington's strategic calculus aligned with that of Israel. No other Israeli prime minister, they note, addressed Congress as often or built such enduring political capital across the American political system. But Washington and Tehran's interim pact to end the war that the U.S. and Israel launched in February shows how that narrative has been reversed. Netanyahu is now forced to accept Washington's Iran policy as President Trump pursues a settlement that increasingly threats Israeli objections as constraints. At home, the reckoning is equally stark, said foreign U.S. official Dennis Ross. Netanyahu is increasingly boxed in between a U.S. president intent on ending the conflict and a domestic-based resistance to concessions, particularly in Lebanon. The war Netanyahu hoped would cement his legacy as the leader who confronted Iran may instead be remembered as the conflict that dismantled a central source of his power. Isolated abroad, constrained by his closest ally, and vulnerable ahead of the autumn election, he now finds the political asset on which he built his career has become his greatest liability. At the outset of the war with Iran, Netanyahu promised ultimate victory. He delivered neither the collapse of Iran's ruling system, nor the defeat of Lebanon's Hezbollah, nor safe return for residents of northern Israel. The U.S.-Iran deal is a decisive blow to Netanyahu, said Aviv Bushinsky, a former Netanyahu advisor. Not only did he lose the war with Iran, he also lost Trump as a friend, he said. Netanyahu's office did not respond to a request for comment. In a press conference this month, the Israeli premier described his relationship with Trump as one between partners who agree many times and sometimes disagree. There had been a systematic campaign to diminish Israel's huge achievements against Iran and its proxies, he said. A White House official said Trump and Netanyahu had a strong relationship and that Israel's military forces had been incredible partners in a war that had decimated the Iranian regime's military capabilities. The disagreement between the leaders, analysts say, extends beyond personal ties to a growing divergence in goals. Trump seeks to disengage from another Middle East war, while Netanyahu views continued pressure on Iran and its ally Hezbollah as essential to Israel's security. Washington has negotiated directly with Tehran, folded Lebanon's conflict between Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah into a broader framework, and created mechanisms to manage ceasefire disputes, moves that, according to 3 regional diplomatic sources, have increasingly sidelined Israel from key decisions. The country that once viewed Netanyahu as an indispensable interlocutor is now, as the regional sources say, treating him as an obstacle to an agreement it is determined to protect. Trump has publicly rebuked Israel's military conduct in Lebanon, while Vice President Vance has underscored the conditional nature of the relationship, warning Israeli critics of the deal against attacking the only powerful ally they have left in the world. 2 Israeli officials familiar with Netanyahu's thinking said he was not concerned that public remarks by Trump and Vance would translate into meaningful shifts in U.S. policy toward Israel, such as delays in arms delivery, even if Israel continues military operations in Lebanon. Trump has signaled that he is prepared to override Israeli priorities in pursuit of U.S. interests. In a TV interview this month, he said that if he tells Netanyahu to do something, he does it. Iran will seek to widen the emerging gap between the U.S. and Israel by portraying any Israeli military action in Lebanon as an attempt to sabotage Trump's diplomacy, forcing the White House to choose between backing its ally or preserving the deal, said Ali Vaiz of the International Crisis Group. What makes Netanyahu's position so precarious, U.S. analysts say, is the loss of his safety net. For years, he cultivated a Republican backing, using it as a counterweight to offset tensions with Democratic administrations, and openly denouncing former President Barack Obama's 2015 Iran nuclear deal from a congressional podium. But Republicans will not break with Trump for Netanyahu, they said. Against this backdrop, the implications of the U.S.-Iran deal also extend to Netanyahu's core strategic bets. He staked his political future on 2 objectives: weakening, if not toppling, Iran's theocratic leadership, and securing normalized relations with Saudi Arabia by expanding the Abraham Accords. Neither has materialized. Iranian leaders have emerged from the conflict entrenched, while the Saudi handshake remains out of reach. Across the region, a recalibration is already visible. Countries Netanyahu once hoped to draw closer are now hedging, slowing normalization with Israel while cautiously reopening channels with Tehran. According to Gulf sources, the logic that underpinned the accords has been eroded by the Gaza war, the unresolved question of West Bank annexation, and a growing perception that Netanyahu's Israel may be more of a liability than an asset in any emerging regional order. An Iranian official said Netanyahu's push to expand the Abraham Accords has been blunted, with several countries now seeking a place in an emerging Iran-aligned framework. This is not just a victory for Iran, it's a failure for Netanyahu, the official said. The Islamic Republic has not just survived, it has emerged as a more influential regional partner.
Nonprofits can now apply for their chance to sit in the Erie County suite at the new Buffalo Bills Stadium. Erie County has begun accepting applications from eligible county-based charitable organizations interested in being entered into a lottery for a chance to receive tickets and parking passes for an assigned Bills home game at the new Highmark Stadium. The application period will close July 24th. The lottery drawing date will be announced prior to the start of the Bills season, which starts with preseason games in August to ensure organizations have time to plan for their assigned game. Applicants must be a charitable organization with a qualifying FO1C3 status for at least 5 years that has not received tickets to a game in the previous 3 seasons. Each assigned game includes 16 total tickets and 4 total parking passes for charitable organizations. 2 selected charitable organizations will be assigned to each game. Erie County Legislature approved the Erie County Hospitality Suite Access Policy last month. The new policy forbids the suite from being used for political purposes or events, bars county officials from attending any regular season and postseason games for free, and establishes a lottery system distributing all game day tickets to qualifying charitable organizations. It also gives several state and county economic development agencies access to the suite. The names of all formal guests who use the suite must be provided to the legislature, and if any of those guests are county officials, that official is required to reimburse the face value of the ticket and a portion of any food and drink cost. The county's hospitality suite is being provided in exchange for a county contribution of $250 million towards the construction of the new Highmark Stadium, which will be transferred to the state once the stadium is completed. The Erie County Hospitality Suite is an opportunity to recognize and support the charitable organizations that serve our residents every day, said the county executive. By using a lottery process, Erie County is making this opportunity fair, transparent, and focused on the public benefit, while giving local charitable organizations a chance to enjoy a Buffalo Bills game at the new Highmark Stadium. Ruth?
Decisions remain with justices in home stretch. This is a Reuters article. The Supreme Court's current term is approaching a climactic finale in which some of its biggest cases yet to be decided will test Donald Trump's aggressive efforts to expand presidential authority. The court issued 5 rulings on Tuesday, with more expected on Thursday. Its annual terms run from early October to around the end of June, sometimes spilling into July. The court has not announced when it will wrap up its term. The court often waits until the end of its term to issue its most consequential rulings. This year is unusual for a number of major cases lingering that involve the critical issue of presidential power and Trump's particularly bold use of it. The cases involve Trump's efforts to limit birthright citizenship, fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, oust Democratic members of independent agencies, and terminate a humanitarian legal status protecting hundreds of thousands of Syrian and Haitian immigrants from deportation. It's totally normal for the most important cases of the term to come out in the last few days. What is unusual is that there are so many blockbuster cases, said University of Michigan constitutional law professor Sam Ehrman. In his second term, Trump has pushed to expand presidential powers in domestic affairs and foreign policy, drawing hundreds of legal challenges on numerous fronts. The Supreme Court, whose 6-3 conservative majority includes 3 justices appointed during Trump's first term, has backed many of his emergency requests to implement policies impeded by lower courts, while litigation over the legality continues. Over the years, the court's conservative majority has embraced a legal theory called the unitary executive that places power over the U.S. government's executive branch solely in the hands of the president. But the embrace may have limits. Of the major Trump cases on which the justices heard arguments, many court watchers have predicted that Trump has a better chance of vindicating his firings of independent federal commission members than his actions on birthright citizenship or Cook. They have a view of a strong executive, but it's not an unlimited executive, he said. So when he is essentially advancing their project, he's pretty likely to win. The court is unlikely to be sympathetic that Trump, through an executive order, can restrict birthright citizenship, Ehrman said. The Republican president's order, part of his hardline immigration approach, would upend a long-standing interpretation of the Constitution's 14th Amendment provision, recognizing the citizenship of people born in the United States. The court had already delivered a major rebuke of Trump's welding of power, striking down in February sweeping global tariffs that he had imposed under a law meant for national emergencies. Other major cases that do not directly involve Trump, including those that will impact elections, transgender rights, and state firearms laws, also remain to be decided. The court is weighing a challenge by Mississippi Republicans to a state law that allows a 5-day grace period for mail-in ballots received after Election Day to be counted, a case that could lead to stricter voting rules around the country. In a case involving Vice President Vance, the court also set to rule on a GOP-led bid to strike down on free speech grounds federal limits on spending by political parties in coordination with candidates. The court's conservative majority in April gutted a pillar of the Voting Rights Act, a landmark 1965 civil rights law that aimed to prevent racial discrimination in voting. That prompted a frenzied round of redistricting across the South to eliminate House districts where black voters make up a majority or near majority, as Republican-led states scrambled to take advantage of the decision. The GOP is seeking to retain control of Congress in the midterms. Black voters tend to support Democratic candidates. The court is also weighing, in cases from West Virginia and Idaho, whether to uphold state laws banning transgender athletes from female sports teams amid escalating efforts nationwide to restrict the rights of transgender people. On gun rights, the court is set to deliver its judgment on a challenge, backed by Trump administration, to a Hawaii law that restricts the carrying of handguns on private property open to the public, like most businesses, without the owner's permission. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, June 25th. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and read broadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Pat Lamont
and Ruth Nowotniak, and thank you for listening.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability